President Mims has asked me to make a special announcement. Certainly it's with a heavy heart that we acknowledge the passing of one of our students today, a junior, Annalicia Leidka, passed away earlier this morning. And I would like you to indulge me with a moment of silence at this time, please. Thank you. We're certainly thinking of Annalicia's family and friends during this difficult time. President Mims.
Thank you, Dr. Tice. Next item on the agenda is the approval or revision of the agenda. I know there's a request to add an executive session. It's a quick one, just to review some personnel matters. I think we could put that at right after committee and representative updates, if everyone's okay with that. Just be like a 5-minute executive session, so that would become 2.07, I believe. So you want to make it 3? 3? Okay, item 3 then. Any other changes or revisions? Is everyone okay with that? All right, is there a motion to approve the revised agenda? Thank you, Sarah. Second from Jason. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye, and no one's opposed or abstaining. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to a presentation from Dr. Matthew Cook, Superintendent of OCM BOCES. We're going to be discussing the OCM BOCES and the relationship between BOCES and Fayetteville-Manlius.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and let me offer my condolences to the FM community on the passing of your student. I'm sorry to hear the news. It feels like in education there's just too much of that lately, and so I do sympathetic and appreciative of the opportunity to be here. What we wanted to be able to do today is just talk with you a little bit about that relationship between OCM BOCES and the Fayetteville-Manlius School District, and thrilled that it's a positive relationship, right? It's always good to be in front of the component school boards, and also here today with one of my bosses, Marissa. So as she serves on the OCM board, so I guess I could start by saying, please don't believe half of what she said about me prior to this, but again, happy to be here. One of the things that, one of the ways I think to structure this conversation, and Dr. Tice made the suggestion that I was hoping he was going to make, is we were thinking about how to approach this, and we're just going to sort of walk you through what we refer to as the snapshot of BOCES services. And so that's the handout that I have before you. And I'm just going to try a little bit to explain at a high level what BOCES offers to FM, how that all works, what that looks like. There will be the opportunity to play Stump the Superintendent if you have specific questions about any of these programs, because when we do these meetings where we meet with each of the school district's administrations to go over the snapshot, I have my whole team there, and they're the experts in all of these areas, so it's entirely possible that if you have a question specifically on one of these, I may or may not be able to answer it specifically, but I certainly will get you the answer if I can't do it myself. So we'll just start with the front cover. One of the things that I like to point out is that our marketing department does a nice job of making sure that these aren't stock photos, but these are these are FM students and staff that you see, or BOCES staff working with your students. So that's I guess maybe the best place to start. FM pays about $181,000 as part of the administrative budget. And you can see right away in the next piece, FM gets back about $199,000 out of cooperative purchasing. So essentially, by participating in BOCES, just in the cooperating purchasing part, you're already paying for the administrative portion of the budget. It's we often will make the joke that that's a lot of hot dogs and basketballs, but when you're purchasing in bulk throughout the entire region, we're able to save districts quite a bit of money. You see that BOCES contracts about 7.4% of your current year budget. That's a little bit low for the region, but that's also not surprising because, as I'm sure you're aware, a Board of Cooperative Educational Services, a BOCES, is geared for supplying services and opportunities for students and for teachers and for the district that a school district is sometimes not able to provide on their own. The larger the district, the more that they're able to provide some of those things on their own. The smaller the district, the more they rely on BOCES. So it's not unusual for a district, say, like the size of DeRuyter, to have a much higher percentage of their budget allocated to BOCES because they rely on us more than a district like FM would have to. But we're thrilled to be able to provide the services we do. And roughly 2.7 million in aid came back to FM through the COSER system, and being able to generate aid on services produced, so or services provided. So hopefully that's a real highlight for you. If you turn and open the cover, on the left we have instructional support services. So what I'll just do now is sort of, there are several divisions within BOCES that are sort of the main divisions, and I'm just going to walk you through those quickly. Don't worry, I'm not going to hit every bullet point, but we're going to just highlight a few different things. So within instructional support services, the thing to understand about that part of the shop is that's the professional development wing. That's the group of folks who are working with your staff in a variety of different ways, providing professional development to teachers, to administrators, to folks who are going to benefit most from that. And sitting here today, Dr. Doughton is a good example of those services, as she served as the director there before coming here. So again, just to highlight a few things, I know FM participates in the DEI COSER service. FM hopefully is getting a lot out of the first Lego League. So we'll do a little bit of everything from professional development to staff to specific services for students out of that piece. And then it's through this part of the organization that we run the regional summer school as well. So again, happy to try to answer any specific questions about the ISS services, but that's what that side of the house does. If we move on to student services, that's sort of the right part of that first page, and just spotlighting a couple of programs. So one of the things that I think that when you think of BOCES, one of the things that I've experienced, right, is sometimes there's a little bit of a stigma. I think folks my age oftentimes will think of BOCES as places where kids who are naughty or weren't able to behave in school go, or students who have severe disabilities, get their needs met in those programs. Obviously, that stigma exists, but we have done everything that we can to try to educate and have people understand how BOCES actually operates, especially when it comes to student services. And there are just a wide variety of learning styles, right? A wide variety of ways kids have to have their needs met, and a wide variety of things kids are interested in. And so one of the things BOCES tries to do is provide as many different experiences as we can. In the career and technical education world, one of the things that we found is, in addition to our site at Thompson Road or our site in Cortland, where students come and have half of their day programs there, we love embedded programs. So we're always making new partnerships within the community. We're having students as much as possible go to and spend time at the embedded programs and get the real world experience of having that business connection right away. So one of the things that we'll point out is the heavy equipment repair program on Tracy that we have with Tracy Road. So we have students who are physically on that site. There's a classroom on site, and then they're able to work on site. It's not highlighted in here, but we also have an auto repair program at Drivers Village, right? So we have, I think, 3 students right now who are currently employees of Drivers Village as they're finishing up their senior year. Those relationships wind up being such a win-win for the businesses as well as for the students, right? You have a very long interview process. And so the businesses are able to figure out what's working for them, and the students are able to figure out, is this something that I really want to do? Another program that we're happy to highlight is we've just started up a firefighting and emergency EMT program, and that's a little bit more in the heart of Madison County. And as you know, we're the Onondaga, Cortland, Madison BOCES. But in Madison County, there are actually 4 different BOCES that touch Madison County because it's right in the center of the state geographically. And so we're partnering with Madison Oneida BOCES on this program and making sure that kids have access to it from both of those BOCES because it's technically in their territory. But we're trying to get, I point this out because we're trying to get creative and we're trying to find different ways to partner and to work with people to offer real life experiences for folks who are going to need different opportunities. And so we don't want the constraints of geography or things like that to be always limiting. And then when you think about some of the programs that we offer, not just in CTE, but in our special education programs, I will just say, I think we offer excellent services for students who have special needs. Our struggle right now is those needs are far exceeding our ability to staff, and the teacher shortage that I'm sure FM is experiencing to some extent, and the region is experiencing, we're also experiencing. And so right now we have a waiting list that we haven't had before in some of our special education programs, and that's problematic for us. So we're really looking to try to aggressively hire and be able to staff up. We offer programs that our component districts tell us they need, right? We only exist to try to meet the needs of the component districts. So seeing that kind of waiting list, I think, is indicative of a lot of what most of us are seeing across the region, kids in higher needs and just having more difficulty coping in a lot of different ways. And so we're doing everything we can to try to meet those needs. On the right side of the fold, you'll see the business and management services. The yellow highlighted piece are all the services that Fayetteville-Manlius subscribes to. I'll just point out a couple of things that you don't subscribe to, just because you might be wondering. This is an example of what I was talking about earlier. The central business office, FM doesn't subscribe to because you don't need to, right? You don't have the need to share a treasurer. You don't have the need to share accounts payable because you're a district that's large enough to support that on your own. So, if you look at some of these things and wonder, well, how come we're not doing that? There's nothing wrong with not doing that, right? And I'm not here to try to sell you something that you don't need. But a lot of different opportunities and ways that we serve not just students but staff you can find in here. So, for instance, the labor relations program is something that all of the school districts wind up benefiting from one way or another. We do a lot of. This is where we talked about the cooperative purchasing comes into here. The health and safety program, there's a variety of different things that school districts all need and benefit from having a larger window of how everybody in the region is doing things, and so we can all learn and grow together that way. We do try to highlight some student success stories, and so we do have a project-based learning high school called Innovation Tech, and one of your students attends there. So we're just spotlighting her a little bit there. But you'll also, as you read through that, you'll see that not only does she attend Innovation Tech, for the second half of her day, she goes over to the Career and Tech program. It's also on Thompson Road. So kids who go to FM high school could benefit from our CTE programs, but also kids from FM who might be in Innovation Tech can still benefit from CTE programs. So there's a lot of that. And I will say the interest in CTE is just blossomed over the last several years. I don't need to tell this community the value of a 4-year education or going to college, but what's funny is I actually found myself in a conversation with a parent about 2 months ago and I said the words, college isn't so bad because the pendulum swings in education, right? And there was, 10 years ago it was everybody has to go to college, and now it feels almost a little bit like it swung pretty far the other way in terms of return on investment and when you think about that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different ways to think about that. On the back, I'm just going to highlight the Regional Information Center for a minute. So there are 37 BOCES in New York State, and those BOCES are broken up into what are called joint management teams, JMTs, and the joint management teams are a combination of BOCES. So we're in a joint management team with 3 other BOCES, city BOCES in Oswego, TST BOCES to the south around the Ithaca area, and to the west, the Cayuga Onondaga BOCES. And that makes up our region. And the Central New York Regional Information Center services that entire JMT, right? They service the 50 districts within that group. So there are 37 BOCES in New York State. There are 12 regional information centers, and we run the one for Central New York. What's a regional information center do? The fact that your internet is working right now is part of what the Regional Information Center does. It's really, right now, our focus has been on data privacy, making sure that we're keeping the system up and running. We're about to go through, we're just putting out bids for the WAN, the Wide Area Network. That's the physical tools that run all of the internet services and all of the connectivity capabilities that school districts have. That organization does all that work. Daily attacks are happening, mostly from Russia and China, on educational systems, trying to get at data information privacy issues. And our team has done a phenomenal job of defending us against those attacks. And so we're part of a statewide region that's always looking to improve those services and make sure that that kind of information stays safe. And that's a big part of what they do. So that's the main departments of BOCES. That's the big picture of what it is that we offer and we provide. One of the things that we have always enjoyed about how this works is that one of the things that we say to our component districts, and it's important for the boards to understand, is you will be voting on, in April, the administrative portion of the budget. And that's what everybody essentially buys into when you're buying into BOCES services. Everything else, almost all the other things that I talked about tonight, you vote with your feet. If it's working for you and you want it, then you come and you purchase the service. If you don't need it or you don't want it, then you don't have to. And so that model, I think, allows for a lot of flexibility and a lot of choice, and it means that a DeRider and an FM don't have to have the same things all the time. And so we're constantly trying to listen to our districts and make sure that we're providing you what you need. So that's the formal part of what I wanted to talk about tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Dr. Cook, one thing I was hoping that you could talk to the board about is how you, as the BOCES superintendent, help coordinate a lot of resources and programs in this area. So, for example, Micron is coming. That's a big talk of all the school districts. What's BOCES' role in that, and how you've been helping to get all the school districts involved? And then there's the STEM school that's going to be in Syracuse, even though Syracuse is not part of BOCES. Perhaps how BOCES is helping to coordinate that program.
Great question. So some of that is structural and some of that is just sort of how influence works, right? So let me talk about the structural piece first, since you mentioned the STEAM school. Legislatively, BOCES is separate from the big 5 school districts. So Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Yonkers, New York City. We are not allowed to provide services in the same way that we do to component districts. So that means that there are some things that we're working out right now around the STEAM school. I'm happy to say that that me and 2 of my colleagues are on the mayor's STEAM School Advisory Council now, and so we've been working with them to try to figure out how to work through some of that pieces in order for there to be. So one of the things that the STEAM school is working through right now is what's the tuition going to be for students who want to attend the STEAM school. For those of you who might not remember how all that works, this is going to be a high school right in downtown Syracuse that's going to offer a variety of different great opportunities for students. It was built with a model of 60% coming from the city and around 40% coming from the surrounding suburbs. So that's what they're looking at. So right now they're working through what tuition is going to look like. And then when a school like FM sends a student to BOCES, you get aid on BOCES services. Right now, there's not a mechanism for FM to get aid if you send students to the STEAM school. So we're working legislatively right now to try to figure out how to make that happen. And there's a couple of different avenues that we're exploring. We've had conversations with legislators about it. I've spoken with the commissioner about it. And she's well aware of that need and is supportive of this. But a legislative change has to happen in order to make that work. So there's some things to work on before we get to 2025 when they're hoping to be able to open the program. So that's that part of it. Micron's another great example. I'm glad you brought it up. I do feel a little bit like I have a part-time job at Micron that doesn't pay anything, given how much time and effort that we're spending working with them. But I've worked in education for, my entire career, and most of the places that I've worked in the upstate New York region have been talking about declining enrollments. If you believe the projections coming out of Center State CEO and our Chamber of Commerce here, Syracuse City has about 225,000 people in it. They're projecting about 150 to 200,000 new residents coming to this region when Micron is fully up and running. That's almost doubling the size of the city of Syracuse. So we're talking about having to learn how to grow again. That's not something that we have been thinking about or planning for in the last several decades, right? So this is interesting and it's exciting. It's also a lot of hurry up and wait because the announcement happened and there's been a lot of excitement generated by that announcement, and now there's a lot of planning, right? They haven't broken ground yet. They're still working on some of those things. They do believe it will break ground this spring for sure, or this summer at the latest. One of the things that I hear regularly is this really going to happen? Right, like that's because in Central New York and Upstate New York, we've had our hearts broken a few times by companies, and so anecdotally, I was out in Boise, Idaho, where the Micron headquarters is for a STEAM event out there, and I was invited by some Micron reps to be out there, and trying to assess that myself, right? Like, is this really going to happen? And when I started talking to people from Boise, and they were terrified that Micron is going to leave Boise and come here. And then I realized, oh, this really is going to happen because we're all skeptical about if they're coming, and they're feeling like they're going to leave. So usually when there's that kind of communication, it becomes interesting. So BOCES's role there is informal, but it's coordinating, because there are things that are happening specifically in North Syracuse and Liverpool because of where the plant is going to be built, and then there are things that are happening regionally. And so our role has really been to try to ensure, and Micron has been great partners about this, that opportunities exist for kids throughout the entire region and not just in North Syracuse and Liverpool. So we've been working hard on that, and we'll make sure that we're at the table representing FM as well as all the other school districts when it comes to that piece. Any other questions?
Just one more thing I'd like you to update or talk to the board about is the changes the regents are considering as far as graduation requirements, and how you as a BOCES superintendent advocate for all the different districts who are going to be affected by that, because there's supposed to be some way to make that more personalized to different districts. So how are you working with the superintendents and the districts?
Yeah, so probably the best way for me to answer that, and I'm going to try to do this quickly because this is a whole nother half an hour, and I'm not going to do that, so don't worry. So part of my role as district superintendent is it's a twofold role, right? I am essentially the CEO of this BOCES, the superintendent of this BOCES, but I'm also the local representative of state ed in this region, in this sole supervisory region. And so so once a month, all of the BOCES superintendents meet with the commissioner and her team. And so part of our last conversation with her team involved this topic, Marissa. And so one of the things that we're always talking with them about is, all right, knowing that this is coming, and really we can't get too far ahead of the Board of Regents because they haven't adopted all the recommendations yet. So there was a Blue Ribbon Commission, they've made recommendations. The next step will be the Board of Regents accepts or rejects those recommendations. I would expect that they're going to accept all of them as written, or almost all of them as written with maybe some modifications. And then after that, it'll be up to the Department of Education to write the regs to make this work all happen. One of the things that I have my eye on, to your point, is that every time, if you really dive into the Blue Ribbon Commission's recommendations, there's a lot of conversation in there about choice and student voice and the ability for students to have a variety of different ways to get to a place where they're demonstrating competencies that will allow them to graduate from New York State. That looks and feels very different than it does right now. And so it's a little bit scary to folks. So our focus right now has been on thinking about two things: making sure the rigor continues to exist so that we can say to the world, if you have a New York State diploma, it means X, right? It means this, and that's a good thing to have from getting into a college or getting into a career point of view. The second thing that we're focused on is equity. And so frankly, when you talk about choice, a district like Fayetteville-Manlius is probably going to be able to offer a lot more different ways to be able to get to that than a district like DeRuyter, who I continue to use because they're geographically close, but they're also very different in terms of size and opportunities. And so we're concerned about that, right? But that doesn't mean that we can't figure that out, and we just need to be able to be creative about what that's going to look like. But the more opportunities for different choices there are, districts that have more, have the ability to provide more opportunities are going to be positioned better to have their kids have that opportunity in a different way. And so that's something that we've really got our eye on. That's the shortest I've ever been able to talk about.
I know. Any more questions or any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Cook.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks.
Next on the agenda, item 2.02, the presentation of our proposed 2024-25 capital budget.
Thanks, everybody, for having me. We're doing round two at this point, so it'll be the capital component of the budget. I've got some information here I'd like to share, and then we'll go through and have questions and make sure everybody gets comfortable. So developing the capital budget, increase year over year from a budgetary perspective is about $328,000, or about 2.2%. Current projections call for a capital budget of approximately $15.2 million. As we go through, we'll talk more about what's driving that. Debt service is one of the main components in it. You can see there's four main categories here: capital project debt, bonds, capital project debt with band or a bond anticipation note, bus purchase debt, and then capital transfer. Debt service itself, the budget, it's about $7.8 million, and year over year it's actually decreased about 1.2, and again we'll talk about that as we go through. So debt itself, the construction bonds, you can see on the left hand side what the actual category is, and in the middle being 23-24, the current budget, and then 24-25 being the projected budget. So in 23-24, we're at about $4.99 million for construction bonds. We're projected to decrease slightly down to 4.656. You can see the first bullet under construction bonds. That decrease is really due to paying down debt from previously completed capital projects. We are seeing on the second bullet the construction ban increasing to about $715,000. So basically, as the bonds have decreased over past projects, we're starting our current project, we're working through our current project, I should say, at the high school. You can see we have a corresponding ban starting for the corresponding bond anticipation notes related to that project. So that high school capital project, you can see at that bottom bullet, being $52 million. Next item being bus purchase debt. You can see in 23-24, we're about $772,000. In 24-25, we're going to be projecting to go up to about $925,000. It's an increase in borrowing costs. Purchases from earlier time periods had much lower interest rates. You can see some examples. So as you went through, and I think basically with our debt cycle, you can see in 21-22, interest rates were as low as an average of a 0.98%, or just about 1%. 22-23, it crept up to 3.79. In 23-24, we're seeing somewhere in the 4.46 amount. So what's driving that increase really is more of the interest rates on the corresponding debt. So as we purchase buses, those corresponding interest rates have crept up, thereby driving the actual debt load. I thought I'd talk a little bit about the electric bus initiative. I know this was a topic from last year as well as crept into this year. I even put it in green for the green initiatives. FM fleet analysis notes from fall 23. I've got some notes here related to what we talked about during those fall sessions. The current FM fleet being 64 diesel buses, which includes 13 spares. The third-party fleet and route analysis that we had done determined that only about 32 of 51 main or primary FM bus routes can be electrified given the current technology and using existing bus runs. Another issue or another thing that popped up was parking at the main site is limited and would need additional space to fit more electric vehicles. The next thing, the electric infrastructure required to power all the charging stations at the main site requires power that far exceeds the power currently available at that site, so we would need additional power. And the last thing, the cost comparison of 64 passenger diesel bus, so basically the large buses that we have, doing an apples to apples comparison, is approximately somewhere around $200,000 for a diesel versus about $500,000 for a similar electric bus. So that's some of the data. Proposition and some of the information to kind of talk about that, because you'll see that when we get to the budget vote day. So the separate purchase proposition. So given many unanswered questions still remain around electric bus prices, funding, garage space, facility improvement needs, electric bus performance, reliability concerns, and weather, etc. The options are we could purchase electric buses, diesel buses, or some combination that you've seen probably some of the other districts have done. Our bus purchase proposition would ideally be for 6 buses. That would be what would be coming out from our fleet. If the bus proposition is voted down, then the district would use current diesel buses for another year. So for example, buses planned to be retired would need to be used for another year, and it will probably cost more to keep those older buses working effectively. The recommendation, I'd recommend at this point that FM School District hold off on purchasing electric buses with hope that the governor's timeline from 27 to 35 gets pushed out until we get more answers. I know this was a big topic from last year. We talked a lot about it this year. We had a chance to actually go through and have a couple presentations done at our bus garage. At this point, we've gotten some data from other districts. We've talked to our own internal teams. We've talked to basically transportation folks, everything from sales to garages, etc. I haven't heard a lot of more answers that were related to the questions that were asked back at that time period. The cost, from what I'm hearing, is some of the other information in regards to reliability, distances, our climate, things of that nature. I really, at this point, haven't changed anything that I'm aware of. I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit at this point as far as in the presentation goes about that topic, or I can keep going with the remaining portion.
I just think it bears repeating, because we talked about this last year with this, that, and you alluded to it, Brad, is if the bus proposition as proposed is voted down, it simply means that our oldest, least efficient, least safe buses stay on the road for another year.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. I'll keep going then. Next item is EPC project debt. So at this point, we had $138,000 left in 23-24 from previous EPC projects. That debt was fully paid off, or projects to be fully paid off, I should say, in 24-25. So that actual EPC debt would actually go away. Next item is cap transfer. So this is an item I think that in the recent past has maybe sit somewhere around the 500,000. It's climbed up to last year. I think it was, or previous year was 1.5 million. Last year we got it to 2 million, and then this year we're at this mark of 1.510. So talking a little bit about it, it's used for capital transfer related work. So basically short-term capital projects that can be done, mobilized fairly quickly, and at the same time knock off capital project needs. In our case, our most recent one would be Mott Road. We've had some air conditioning work done there. There was some remaining work that we haven't been able to get to. This would take care of a portion of that with some of that air conditioning there, as well as some HVAC-related controls that would need to be done. The overall decrease, in this case, going down from the 2 million to the 1.5 million, ideally you'd be using some of that funding to use towards the capital project. You can see here in that bottom bullet that the overall decrease is primarily due to capital-related work being addressed in a separate and it's $15 million capital project proposition, which I think will actually be in 15.4, and we'll talk a little bit about that in my next presentation. The next area will be maintenance and custodial. Some of the components of maintenance and custodial, you can see salaries, wages, equipment, material and supplies, contractual, gas, electric, and water, and security. So within that budget, it's about 7.4 million, and the projected increase year over year is about 6.07. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. Salaries would be the first thing. You can see custodial salaries, subs, extra duty. the main components there. You can see the corresponding salary projections as well as what we've budgeted in the current year. In the actual custodial area, it's basically negotiated contractual agreements, and then it's just simply budget to actual adjustments to bring you up from 23-24 to the 24-25 projected year. The custodial subs and extra duty are actually proposed or projected to be decreases. That's really budget to actual adjustments. In the previous year, it was money that we had in there kind of built up as part of surplus that we've extracted out and applied in other areas. So it's really more of a budget to actual to truly give you what we're projecting out for those areas to actual have for salaries for the subs as well as extra duty components. Maintenance salaries, you can see there again, similar. Maintenance salaries, maintenance subs, and maintenance extra duty. Again, the first line, it's really, again, reflecting those negotiated contractual agreements, and then budget to actual adjustments to get you to what we believe it's going to project to be actually next year. The maintenance subs is actually going to be projected to be flat year over year, and then the maintenance extra duty, we're actually going to decrease it projection-wise. And again, that's the more of that budget to actual to truly reflect what we really believe is going to be projected amounts for next year for that extra duty portion in 24-25. Maintenance and custodial equipment, you can see the first one being custodial equipment, and an increase from the 67,000 or 68,000 approximately up to that 86. You can see in the first bullet, that's really that increase is due to equipment needs. We've got some additional cleaning equipment that's really representing that increase. The next one being maintenance equipment itself. In this case, it's projected to be flat. I think there was a boom truck that was identified as the main component within that would be something we're buying. The remainder would just be basically some surplus at this point for maintenance-related equipment. Gas, electric, water, and telephone. You can see gas is the first one. Usage and higher prices, really what we're seeing there is we're projecting an increase of approximately about 50,000. What we've done, and you guys have seen this, is we've added the AC to buildings, so as prices have gone up as well as usage, that would be an area we'd project an increase in, specifically as we talked about everything from Mott Road to Fayette, et cetera. Electric, water, and telephone service, basically projected to be relatively flat year over year. Small increase, I think, in water, but overall, looking at actual dollars, they've basically projected to remain steady at the amounts that they're at. Conference fees and dues, not much there. Basically projected to be flat year over year, small dollars. Custodial maintenance supplies, the first one you can see there's an increase from the actual custodial supplies line. That's really primarily due to overall rise in prices from some of the stuff that we've been buying. We have seen some significant increases in pricing. And the supplies line for the maintenance side is projected to have a significant increase. I took a round number, the 300,000. What we've been seeing is basically that 241 was basically low. The other idea is really the fact of kind of where we're trying to identify is what we have for internal folks that we maybe can do some of our more focus on internal maintenance work. So as we've seen those corresponding lines basically edge up over previous years, this is something we're trying to do a true up and do that more budget to actual, but at the same time, it's really having a focus on doing some more internal maintenance work. Maintenance outside services, basically projected to decrease slightly. This is due to some of the work again being addressed, in this case with a capital project we'll be focusing on. Some examples of the outside service costs include HVAC repairs and controls, maintenance agreements, building repairs, roofs, windows, and things of that nature. Services from BOCES, you can see here it's a slight increase year over year. Cost projected to be, again, relatively flat. Some of the examples of services include the health and safety coordinator, health and safety workshops and training, things of that nature. So again, a small increase. Security is the last item. Equipment is basically going to zero at this point. Really the focus is on outside services and supplies. Within outside services, we're really focused on intrusion system upgrades. We'll be talking a little bit more about those in the next PowerPoint that we'll be doing on the capital project. And then security supplies itself with door hardening, security cameras, and Informacast emergency notification software upgrade at Mott Road and Enders. Next steps will be program and revenue component. March 25th, we'll be talking about program and transportation as well as revenue. Overall budget, again, we'll bring everything back together. So you'll have admin, capital, program, transportation, and revenue on April 15th. Ideally, the board would adopt the budget on April 15th. budget hearing would be May 13th, and then the budget vote itself would be May 21st. And that represents the capital portion. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
Moving on to item 2.03, district capital improvement needs proposal.
So the next item we'll talk about is going to be a potential capital project. It would be for May of '24, be a separate proposition. Ideally, it would be somewhere in the $15.4 million. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of what's driving it, but ultimately the proposed scope, as you can see, roof replacements, safety and security upgrades, and HVAC controls. As we'll go through, it's a very brief presentation. Same time, we can kind of maybe do a little bit of Q&A as we go through and kind of talk about anything where maybe there'll be questions, and we've got some folks here with us that can help answer. So the actual summary of kind of what we're talking about with the capital project, you can see with the roofing, represents about $9.4 million. There's various buildings involved with that roofing for the $9.4 million. Basically, what you've had is over time with different projects and things of that nature, roof warranties, priority levels, what you're able to fit in for alternates, things of that nature. We got to a point where there's various buildings that have leaking. That's the real easy way to say it. I can talk about specifically for the high school. There were certain ones we'd love to get in. We have a $52 million project, but unfortunately, given some scope as well as pricing, we got to a point where we were able to only put in certain components, and unfortunately, some of them didn't make it into that list. We knew at some point it needed to be done. Basically, everything at one point in time recently was under warranty, and they were all actually at a point where they were working effectively. Unfortunately, we got to a point where they're not. We've tried to triage them as best we can. We've got some great pictures of garbage cans and things of that nature, but we're really at that point where we can't really Band-Aid it anymore, and it's something we really need to go through and address. We've also got safety and security as well as HVAC related items. That represents about $6.78 million, a grand total of $16.2 million. That does have some alternates in that number. As you can see, the line below it being about approximately $850,000. That would be some district office as well as conference center related items, specifically some roofing, I think, at the DO. Those two items are really not aidable. They're not student contact based areas. Therefore, that might be something I would prioritize as being an alternate. And if we have the funding, it'd be great to get to. But if we don't, that you can see there in green, it brings you down to approximately $15.3 million. So my proposal would be a capital project proposition of about $15.4 million. What does that mean from a taxpayer impact as far as the district goes? It would represent approximately about $26.60 on a $100,000 home. The main driver in that is basically driven by what items on there are aidable and what items are not. I know some of the high school stuff, because it doesn't hit the maximum cost allowance that was in place because of all the work we've done or are doing, it would be an item that would not be aidable. You also have items like the DO and the conference center, they're not as well. But if you pull those items out, that's kind of what you're looking at. Ideally, somewhere in that ballpark of $26.60, but that'd be something I'm going to verify with our fiscal advisors folks. Is there a question, Sarah?
Yeah. So Brad, can you just explain, so the green 15.3 comes in, but then you're recommending 15.4. Can you just give a little information about why 15.3?
Certainly. So basically, is it kind of is above that, where you've got the roofing and safety and security related, gives you the 16.2. If you pull out the alternates, you're down at about 15.3. The feeling is that basically with the alternates, it might be something we could even do internally. We've also actually have some other areas that we're going to try to take a look at and see if we could scope those into being our own internal buildings and grounds folks, maintenance, things of that nature. The 15.3 is where we got to from with soft costs, et cetera, that we felt pretty comfortable. It would be a number that we could budget for within the project, I should say the proposition, and then put that forward to be able to be addressed. The 15.4 million, again, would be something with the 2660 attached to it from a tax impact. Is that kind of what you were looking for, or is there?
Well, not exactly. I guess so if it adds up to 15.3, why would we recommend going to 15.4 on the ballot?
The $100,000 represent really if there was a difference in like soft costs, because it's an estimate.
Okay.
It sounds like what you were looking for. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just
okay.
at this point, given what we've got from a soft cost perspective, and pricing escalations that could happen. I'll talk a little bit more on timing in a minute, and that'll kind of drive probably more of what you were looking for. So a design and construction schedule, I was going to have actually Erica, who's with us from King & King Architects, and she could maybe come in, talk a little bit about that, and then we can answer some questions related to this as well.
Hello, everybody. Erica Civitello with King & King Architects, the project manager, working with the district to help prioritize and work through the scope on a short, quick turnaround that we've been doing. So one of the main reasons that this work related to the roof, not only is it an issue for them to maintain because they have had some acceleration in the deterioration of the roofing, excuse me, but it's also the SED review time right now. So typically a project has to go to the state for permitting. They are the issuing the building permits for any school projects. They are currently at a 6 to 7 month review time. So it has pushed us a little bit to try to accelerate this process and try to get them in a little bit sooner. So for the roofing, we're looking at kind of putting all that together in one package and submitting it sometime in June or July, which is an accelerated submission. And that would potentially be bid in February or March of 25. So what you'll see next is, because of that long delay with SED, we're looking at work summer of 2025 and 20 of 26. So that, you can see working out to 2026. We have, and we're going to be voting it in May. There is some time there. For what we're calling phase 2, which is safety, security, and HVAC, that would be submitted towards the end of summer in September. That would be bid in August or September of 2025, with a construction timeline of October 2025 to September of 2026. This one, we're allowing a little bit more time so we can discuss the most ideal way to procure this work and the most ideal time to bid the portions that will be publicly bid. Do you guys have any questions?
I guess, Erica, real quick, one thing we didn't discuss, because we're talking about construction October 25 to September of 26. Any student impact or student displacement associated with the project at all?
So the work would really be occurring ideally on second shift if we're doing anything during the school year, so it wouldn't have impact on students.
Could you just talk at a high level on how the safety and security decisions were made, just with respect to the audit, and what the process was for the district to make those decisions?
Sure. I'm going to bring Jeff Brown up, our Director of Facilities, and have him help kind of talk a little bit about that, and then we can identify and talk about some of the stuff that you were asking. The only thing I want to say quick too, just as a note, you can see that bottom asterisk at the bottom are tying into that safety and security and HVAC. So you can see that on the bottom, safety, security, and HVAC construction will be determined on subsequent review. So there is going to be some discussion looking at through facilities committee, et cetera. What are we talking about from a purchase perspective? Is it state contract? Is it going to be bid? What's it going to look like from a timing perspective? What's it going to be the dollars or cost impact of that? And therefore the schedule up above kind of thing will be reflected through there as we go. So again, student impact, I would expect it to be second shift. Ideally, we can do things in the summer, or we can do it second shift. And as far as the roofing goes, it's one, that the question I think that I was gonna ask myself, and then as I put it up, was gonna be that construction timeline, summer of '25 and summer of '26. If we had the roofing team that was gonna be whoever bids on it and wins, is it somebody we could have immobilized already here on site and do all buildings that summer? I don't know if that's gonna be too big of an ask with that many potential buildings and that much work identified, but that could be something too we'll be talking about and see if we can kind of shorten that time frame from that aspect. As those things get identified from either state contract bidding, or if it can be done earlier than later, would also define what it's gonna be from a pricing perspective. You got some escalation percentages tied to this because, as we all know, prices go up every year. So some of that would be identified too. It's built into the numbers we currently already have, so that's the good news. So maybe there'll be some cost savings on that side as well. So that being said, let me bring up Jeff Brown. We can talk a little bit about everything here with the items for the safety, security, and HVAC.
If you guys remember, last year we did 2 security audits that were done. Really for what we were looking to do for our security now is to bring in some of the life safety systems that we have to upgrade that are required for our buildings. And from the 2 audits that we had done, we really just took some of the top things that were identified in those audits and brought them into this project to get them complete. And it's really that simple, honestly.
That's helpful just to frame and for the public to be reminded about the security audits.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions in regards to the actual design and construction schedule? If there isn't, I'll move on to the next part. So next will be the pre-referendum schedule. You can see here, February 26th was the start of it. It was initial general presentation we did on the actual capital project, what we were projecting it to kind of go out and be, as well as the components. March 11th being tonight, talking about the Board of Education, the presentation, project scope and estimated cost, as we talked about, being the $15.4 million, as well as the roof, HVAC, and safety and security. Project timing we just talked about. The next thing would be the seeker and project resolution, which I believe was on the agenda for this evening. And then in April, there'll be a public notice with 45 days prior to vote. And then ideally of May 24th, there'll be a separate proposition with a $15.4 million proposal for that proposition for the work. Are there any questions in regards to the schedule? And then just overall for questions. I know it was general. I wasn't sure if there's anything maybe anybody thought would help for any of the folks that are tuning in, or we will have a communication put together in the real near future that we're working through now. That'll get sent out. Ideally, that'll be a little bit more detailed. It'll talk about maybe some nice pictures and some identification tying it back to when things were done, what it looks like now, how we got to where we got to, overall dollars, maybe defining a little bit more about some of the actual scope of the work. Dan, did you have a question? Oh, Craig.
We didn't rehearse this, so he'll do back up to what I have here. I mean, there's an urgency here that we've talked about in the facilities committee. Certainly, the facilities committee is working on, as you know, a long-range plan in terms of the buildings, and certainly another large project was on the horizon. As many folks know in this room, that our 2015 building condition survey had about $120+ million worth of work. We've certainly tackled the Wellwood project. We've tackling the high school project as well, but that certainly left some items from 2015 on the table. Those have been captured in the most recent building condition survey, which is about $161 million. So there is more work to be had down the road. As you said, the maximum cost allowances reset. So this represents roughly a little less than 10% of the main priority items, such as roofing and safety and security, which I don't think can wait for a larger project down the road. So I think it's a sooner rather than later, and I appreciate your efforts to tie this in to the current budget vote in terms of making it easier to put before the community. Mr. Seibert?
Yeah, so thanks, Brad. I just want to put a little bit of context to this because these are things that we've talked about at great length, as you know, in our facilities committee meetings. The things that we focus on first and foremost in this district are our learning spaces and capacity for our students to learn and our teachers to teach in the most conducive environment that they can do so. And on safety and security, so ensuring that they are safe while they are doing those things, especially given the broader environment in which we live today. It is not traditional for this district to do a capital project at the same time as our budget vote. The difference that it's really important for members of the community to remember is that when you have a problem at your home and your roof, for example, is leaking, you make a phone call the next day to a roofing contractor, and hopefully they come out within a week or so and estimate what needs to be done, and you find a way to get that done as fast as possible. But as you and Erica alluded to, that's not the process with schools. We have to get it submitted to state ed, it has to be approved by state ed, it has to go out to bid. And what we encountered as we planned the prior capital projects was we had estimates on remaining life of things such as roof that we estimated out, and our experts had estimated out for us what expected lifespan would be. And we focused on the highest needs components of the other building projects. We have had some roofs, as Erica said, that have worsened faster than we expected them to, worsened faster than was projected, to the point today where it's a critical need, where the leaking is impacting learning spaces in quite a number of our buildings. And it needs to be remedied, or we're going to have persistent problems in learning spaces. And if we were to leave this to a traditional time when we do a capital vote, which would be in the fall, then all we're doing is putting that whole process off 6 or 8 months farther down the line. The problem gets that much worse, costs escalate. So we made the decision as a committee, recommended to this board, and we'll discuss it further as this board, to proceed with this now because of the impact that the roofing condition is having on our learning spaces. Bottom line is we're either gonna have classrooms with leaks or we're not gonna have classrooms with leaks. Classrooms with buckets collecting water or not classrooms with buckets collecting water. And I think our district expects better than that. Our teachers and our students deserve better than that. So we have to take care of it now. Every time we do a building project, we also take into account safety and security measures. I don't remember ever doing a building project in this district that we didn't also address safety and security. And as you mentioned, we did just recently have these 2 security audits. We do these every several years so that we can stay current and make sure that all of our needs are being met. There were some things that were identified, some of which we knew about and were planning for. Some have advanced that are appropriate to roll into this, so that, again, those take time to plan, to be approved, and then to implement, and they need to be addressed sooner than later, so we're addressing those now. So this is not our normal process at FM of having a capital vote at the time of the budget vote, but also not normal for FM is having classrooms with leaking roofs and buckets in the classrooms. And we need to do better than that. So that was not planned. Our staff here has done a tremendous job band-aiding those roofs. But as they've explained to us, they've gotten to the point where every time they go on the roof to band-aid it, it causes a different problem. So it's past that time. And this is not, we try to define all of our projects in this district on wants and needs. These are not wants. These are very clearly needs. We don't have an option. We need to do these things. To vote no on this is to say, open up the roof and just let's have open air classrooms. And that's not what we do in this district. So it is a need. It is certainly my hope that the district will understand that and support that, as I would expect based on past history. They do, because our district knows that we are here, most of us in this community, because of our schools. And we need to have the right learning environments for our students, our teachers, in a safe and secure manner. So that's why we landed on this non-traditional timing to get this done now, so that we can get this project moving and provide the right learning environments for our students.
Glad you brought all that up. We've had the benefit, some of us that are in facilities committee, where we've had discussions that are anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours long. So some of us have heard a lot of this already. Some of us have heard, in great detail how we got here, where we're going, what the timeline is, what the corresponding costs are, how we're going to be able to do it, what's it going to mean for future projects. To add to that, you go back to Wellwood, you had a limited amount of money, you had whatever you were going to identify able to do it. You can think of it as the restaurant concept. You've got your wallet with here's the dollars, you got the a la carte menu, what are you getting? And as those prices and market kind of shifts, that's kind of where you're at with that. Unfortunately, at the time, there were some areas that where there were some needs that just didn't get done at that point. So the thought is you go to the next project, ideally you pick them up. You get to the next project, it's $52 million. The focus is really on the high school. You have a maximum cost allowance at Wellwood that didn't reset. So the utopian model is you don't go touch something where you can't get building aid on it. You wait for it to actually get to a point where the maximum cost allowance resets. It really resets right about in the time for this project. So that's kind of where you get into that timing aspect. You talk to your director of facilities, you got your folks that work for you from your custodial maintenance, and you're asking at this point how you're triaging all those different areas that need to be done. We've had a wet season this year. Principals have called up, here's where we're at, and if you had some of those days, you can recall that where we had a lot of rain, I guarantee you we had everybody there, and there's pictures to prove it, to kind of show here's what we're impacting. Some of it's disappointing, I would think, to the average voter who sees Wellwood with all the money we've spent on it, why didn't we get it done? But as Dan's point is, you had roofing that just wasn't in there that needs to be done. The warranty's up, the roofing is leaking, it can't be triaged anymore, the maximum cost allowance is going to reset. Now is the time to do it. It's going to take a little more time to get it planned out and put out there from a bid perspective, state review, mobilization, and then get it done. That's kind of the process it goes. From the safety and security side, as Dan alluded to, we've had the audits done, we're identified, we've done actually very well from that aspect, but every day there's something new from a technology perspective, from intrusion systems to lockdown to you name it. So if we're going to incorporate it, it needs to be done. Part of that project was deemed you put it through a capital transfer. Historically at FM, I think we have been anywhere from 500,000 up to 2 million. You can see here in the work needed, we're at 15. So there really was no other way to go do it unless to go put it out. And when you're going to go put it out, if you're going to meet that timing perspective, it really became now is the point. I don't think anybody really wanted to apply a different proposition and separate it and keep it in May. Ideally, you want to segregate it and put it maybe out in the fall or something to that nature. But from a timing, need, maximum cost allowance, resetting, and where we're at, it's just kind of married up to this is the time, and therefore we're asking for folks to go forward. Are there other questions? Well, thank you, everyone.
Okay, moving on to item 2.04, President's Report. Later on in the agenda, we'll be voting to approve the superintendent's 2024 goals. Appreciate Sarah and Daryl taking the lead on that in my extended absence to help the board put these 4 different goals together. Did either one of you want to speak to talk about these, or board process, or how we got here, or? Oh. You did a very good job, just wanted to make sure that since you guys were the leads on it. Okay.
Well, I think we took last year's goals and talked about where we sit currently and what we still want to continue work and progress in. And then taking a look at the items that we've already committed to, like the student and staff and community surveys, and making sure we're bringing in some of those aspects into our future plans. And then the Mental Health and DEI Committee, they're working hard to provide input, and so that seemed like an area that we wanted to make sure we were giving some airtime to as well from a goal. And then, of course, as we were just talking about with the facility planning and all of the expenditures that are surrounding that, just making sure that those are planned out as effectively and communicated as such, so it seemed like it was try to hit all the marks with the strategic plan too.
Oh, and again, thank you guys very much. Anyone else have any comments or thoughts on the superintendent's goals? Okay, thank you. So then we'll move to item 2.05, the superintendent's report. Dr. Tice?
Thank you, President Mims. The backup information is in board docs there. Capital project update, and I'll ad lib here as they're all walking out of the room, thanking certainly our OACM team for all their efforts. The high school capital project continues to move forward rapidly at the high school with contractors installing windows in the new STEM technology edition. I don't know if you had a chance to see that, as well as the new main office suite in the center of the building. The spring-like weather has allowed masonry work, exterior brickwork to be completed in a timely fashion. Under District Instrumental and Vocal Music Concert, I'm pleased to remind everyone that the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District will host a district-wide instrumental and vocal music concert that will feature student performers from all levels as they showcase our rich traditions and the proud legacy of our music program. The concert will take place tomorrow, March 12th at 7 p.m. in the SRC Arena and on the Onondaga Community College campus. Healthy Habits Night at ESM High School. As you know, we partner with ESM and JD, and because of this partnership, ESM will be hosting a community discussion around adolescent and physical mental health. The event will take place this Wednesday, March 13th at ESM High School. Doors open at 6, and a panel discussion beginning at 6:30 will feature local specialists sharing their expertise on the topic. The National College Fair. For the first time since the pandemic, the National College Fair returns to Syracuse, New York. It'll be held at the Convention Center, the On Center, on Monday, March 18th from 5 to 7:30 in the evening, and Tuesday, March 19th from 9 to 11:30 in the morning. The College Fair is an opportunity to informally gather information about colleges near and far. The event is free, but registration is preferred so that each participant will be issued a personalized code which will allow them to be scanned in, and so they don't have to fill out information request cards at each of the tables representing the colleges. And last but not least, our high school musical. As a reminder, our high school musical production, Big Fish, will continue this coming weekend with both matinee and evening performances. I had the distinct honor and pleasure of attending opening night this past weekend, and both students and teachers did an outstanding job. Hornet Pride. That ends my superintendent's report.
Any questions for Dr. Tice?
No, but I was just gonna add, I also attended Big Fish and it was absolutely amazing. So huge congrats to the students and staff.
Okay, so next on the agenda is our committee and representative reports. Item 2.06, looks like audit has not met recently. Not until June. Okay. Community relations, no report from the community relations, correct? Okay. Facilities, Dan, did you want to add anything? There's quite a bit. You're good? Okay. Just want to make sure. Well. Okay, policy is meeting on April 8th. DEI met, and I believe that was reported in the February meeting. Okay. Mental Health Task Force is a meeting coming up next week on the 20th. I'm not sure who the chair, I'm looking for the, all right, Legislative Liaison, Carol, any update? Okay, perfect. And Angelina, our student representative.
Short update for our school. First, as Dr. Tice mentioned, our school today is most of the students are in shock of Annalisa's death, passing, and but for this week, last week, and the following few weeks, our school will hold many events that will kind of unite the student body. That includes Pi Day, this Thursday, and the musical that we have mentioned last weekend and this weekend. And there has been a large turnout, and there has been great effort in the set building and every performer's efforts. And also the school's annual showboat talent show has started their preparations. And today the school resource officers actually held a kind of like a sharing stories meeting after school that kind of also united the students, and it was an enjoyable experience. Lastly, on the side of like the ex officio, today I connected with the Brojo Club in preparing a regular segment for summarizing the board meetings to the students through FMTV, and so that effort is underway. And yeah, last thing is the rooms are leaking.
Thank you very much, Angela. I appreciate that. I'm really glad to hear you're gonna be doing those episodes. That'd be great. Okay. All right, so we added a quick executive session for item 3.0. So we will hopefully be gone just about 5 minutes or so.
Add one thing, Angela, as you do those updates, it may help, or it will be, as a reminder that especially many of our seniors can vote as these needs get addressed, and many of them forget that they can. It would be helpful to remind any of those of age that they can vote in that.
Thank you. That would be a great idea to mention on FMTV as I summarize it. Thank you.
So is there a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing the employment history of a particular individual? I think that was Jason and then Rebecca. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye. And no one's opposed or abstaining? All right, we should be very quick, or we'll try to be very quick. Thank you. Okay, continuing with item 3.02, I believe it is now, public comment, which we do not have anybody for public comment. Thank you. So we'll move on to new business. Item 4.01, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the February 12th regular meeting? Is there a motion? Thank you, Cindy. Second from Sarah. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate aye. Anyone opposed? And I'll be abstaining. Next, item 4.02, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the February 26th regular meeting? Thank you, Daryl, and a second from Cindy. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Nope. And I'll be abstaining from that one as well. All right, we're moving on to item 4.03, approval of the 2024-25 school calendar. Is there a motion that it be resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius School District approve the 2024-25 school calendar as presented? Is there a motion? Thank you, Sarah. Second from Daryl. Discussion.
Yeah, Craig, I was hoping that maybe you could just highlight for the community any differences that have popped up between this year's calendar and next year's calendar, in terms of, it looks like we might have an additional holiday or two in the calendar, and then any difference in emergency closing days and whatnot.
Certainly. The calendar, there are only 4 emergency closing days next year, and that, excuse me, honors the maximum of 186 work days, which is what is stipulated in the collective bargaining agreement with the FMTA. So there will not, unlike this year, there will not be any give back days. This year we had 188 days, which exceeded the work year stipulated in the collective bargaining agreement. Hence, we had given back the Eclipse Day and the Friday before Memorial Day. So next year there are only 4 emergency closing days embedded. You will also see Asian Lunar New Year in there as well. That was listed as a school student holiday. It is not a state holiday. It is not a federal holiday. But what we had learned from state ed is that it, first of all, because it's a student holiday, cannot be a student day, nor can it be a staff day either. So that is a day that folks will have off for Asian Lunar New Year. What is also listed there is Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. Eid al-Fitr is March 31st. Eid al-Adha is June 6th. Those are listed as professional learning days, staff development days. Certainly, if somebody is Muslim, they can take a personal day towards that, but we have put them as a staff day at this point. Should the governor come out and declare those, much like Asian Lunar New Year, then we wouldn't be able to do staff development days on that day. As you've heard me say before, that'll be the beginning of the end of the February break, which we were discussing in our district office team. You know, there might be only less than 3 years left on the February break if the governor keeps honoring certain days, because you've got Diwali and Onam, and there's a whole bunch of other days that could be listed as well. So there are 2 weeks at the holidays at the end of the year and your New Year's. So I know folks are excited about that. The calendar also has 2 staff development days in August before Labor Day. It does not have a Tuesday as a staff development day. We will begin the year for students kindergarten through 9th grade with Link Crew at the high school that day, as well as the rest of the students arriving on Wednesday the 4th in grades 10 through 12. Did I hit all the points?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Craig.
Craig, the only question I had, and I apologize, I didn't get this to you earlier, so you very likely may not even know this one, to check with Mr. Sugar on. Do you know why the fall sports are not starting this year until August 26th, which is quite a bit later, at least by a full week than historically?
I can ask him, but I know there was a movement, not just within the section, but within all of NISFA, to kind of shrink the calendars down for each of the seasons. I know this year, definitely the winter season was shorter, so I'm assuming their work continues with the other seasons as well. So much of the fall, as you know, is around the football schedule, which is decided upon by the New York State High School Athletic Association, and so they work backwards from the state championships in the Dome and work their way back that way. So I can double check with him. I think those are probably pretty good guesses.
Any other questions for Dr. Tice about the calendar? All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. And no one's opposed or abstaining. Moving on to item 4.01, approval of Dr. Tice's 2024 goals. Is there a motion to approve the goals? Oops, sorry, Chrissy, and second from Daryl or Cindy? Take your pick. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye, and no one's opposed or abstaining. Moving on to, item 4.05, is there a motion that it be resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius School District approve the secret resolution, type 2 action, bus proposition as presented? Is there a motion? Thank you, Sarah. Second from Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate aye. Aye, and no one's opposed or abstaining. Next, item 4.06, is there a motion that it be resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius School District approve the secret resolution, type 2 action, capital project as presented? Is there a motion? Dan and Daryl, any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye, and no one's opposed or abstaining. Next, item 4.07, is there a motion that it be resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District approve the annual budget notice as presented? Is there a motion? Thank you, Cindy, and a second from Jason. Any discussion?
Yeah, I think, Marissa, just to point out to the public, this will be the first year that the vote will take place at Wellwood rather than at Fayette. So that is in the notice and will be a change of venue for folks this year.
Thank you. All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye, and no one's opposed or abstaining. All right, item 5.01, board development. I'm not seeing anything under board development. Does anyone have anything they want to discuss in the board development? Okay, moving on to 5.02, potential considerations for future meetings. Still have some items there that we'll get updates on and have discussion.
Our district clerk and I met with our communications folks and taking a look at some of the infographics, whether it's school start time, personalized learning, and so forth. I think they'll be excited what the final product will be, sticking with our branding. So that was a very productive meeting, and more to come on that.
Thank you. Let's see. So our future meetings calendar, next meeting is on March 25th. Which will be a budget presentation on program budget and revenue. 6.02, lots of events coming up. As Dr. Tice mentioned, the concert tomorrow at the SRC. And as Rebecca mentioned, the high school musical, among many other items, Wellwood musical, and just a lot of different things to participate in. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Chrissy. And a second from Sarah. All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye, and no one's opposed or abstaining. You're abstaining? One abstention, thank you. Now, for an eight.
And if I may, I know there's no comment, but some of those with regret. in terms
Yes,
of-
yes, let's, yes, lots of. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn for executive session for the purpose of discussing the employment history of particular individuals? Thank you, Chrissy. Second from Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate aye. Aye, and no one's opposed or abstaining. All right, so we'll go to executive session and then we'll adjourn from there without any further public portion of the meeting. Thank you.